Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and whether those people eating all the food at the bar are slowly turning into pigs. At a corner table by the fire are 3 people. One of them is wondering why the strange creature in the corner has no face. And that's me, Matthew Mellema, the one wondering, not the one without a face. And welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between faith, art, and storytelling. Our goal is to help you connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories in order to understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. In what is becoming a worrying trend for me, this is yet another episode which is inspired, at least in part, by an exchange I saw on Twitter. So, as 5th grade boys and their parents could tell you, they're currently working on a movie adaptation of the ultra-popular video game Minecraft. I have seen the trailer for this movie and, Well, on the plus side, it's starring Jack Black, and it's clear they've spent a lot of money on it. And? Okay, this movie looks really terrible. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. And I wasn't the only person on Twitter who thought so. But, because this is Twitter, other people fired back to defend the movie. Their basic argument, lighten up, people. This movie's made for 6-year-olds. Who cares? Now, as you can imagine, this generated its own outrage. But that opinion does express a sentiment that a lot of people have for kids' movies. Especially animated kids' movies for some reason. Can a film that's essentially a bunch of cartoon drawings aimed at kids actually be cinema? Can it actually be art? That's what we're going to discuss on this show. How animated kids' movies can also be serious art. And why that seriously matters. And we'll do this primarily by analyzing some of our own favorite animated kids films. Joining me at the table, there's Christina Brown, who was heroically staving off the giggles after I guess I was doing funny hand gestures during the introduction. How are you, Christina?
I am great. I apologize. I could not stop whatever it was guffawing.
I was just getting really
silently
into my intro.
Meanwhile, I had no idea what she was laughing at. I was just trying not to look at her because I figured it would make her laugh more.
No, I think I had a snort laugh right in the middle of poor Matt's introduction. So.
It was a snort laugh, but that's okay. And also joining us at the table in complete control.
Oh yeah, always
is Mandy Hauk. How are you, Mandy?
I'm good.
You are Groot. All right, this podcast's off to a great start.
I was going to say good and great at the same time. I'm somewhere between good and great.
Well, that's a good situation to be in. So let's kick things off. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this part because, let's be real. If you're the sort of person who's listening to this podcast, you probably already agree with us that, it's important that kids have good movies, all that stuff. But let's talk about it briefly, because I am interested why this stigma seems to exist. I encounter people every now and then who seem to assume that, it's just a dumb kids movie, who cares? Or it's, just a cartoon, who cares? And I'm interested to hear why we think that stigma is out there. So Mandy, why do you think there's this pervasive attitude in large parts of the culture that, it's just a kids movie, who cares?
I really think it's kind of a false sense of maturity that people they think that if they're a grown-up or an adult that they shouldn't enjoy things that were made for a simpler mind, which I think is really sad. And I was thinking about that because you asked this question. We sort of discard the young in that way. We discard the youthfulness and childlikeness as if it's something to put behind you. But then at the same time, we fear age. So I think in our culture, we just want to be in the middle and, run away from being young, but then slam the brakes on before we get old.
So you don't want to be a child, but you don't want to be old. You want to be
I think we
a young adult forever.
We conflate being like a child with being immature, and that's to our detriment, I think, because I remember one of my favorite animated movies, and I do not consider this one art, so I'm not stealing from the later discussion, but is Emperor's New Groove.
Great movie. It's a great movie.
I love that movie. But if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it has horrible reviews. And I remember reading the critics' reviews, and I was like, you guys aren't watching this for the right reason.
But is it the critics that have a bad review or the watchers? Or both?
No, the critics.
The critics. Okay.
The watchers love the people love it. This movie's people's champion.
No, I just mean the Rotten Tomatoes. No, and
because Rotten Tomatoes has both.
Fair
that's
point.
that's what's checking. Okay.
No, and it's because they're like, oh, it's silly and whatever. And I'm like, excuse me, it's supposed to be silly, and what's wrong with silly?
I like that. Okay, so this misplaced desire to seem mature and above it all.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about you, Christina? Why do you think so many people have this attitude like, it's a kid's movie, who cares, whatever?
I've been thinking a lot about it because, I mean, and here's the thing is, I don't know that I have an answer, even though and we talked about this like months ago, Matthew, I don't know if you remember, but I have been one of those people that you've met occasionally, as you said in the introduction, who believes, it's a kid's movie. I don't want to watch it. I don't really care about it. Sometimes I still am that way, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not
not all the kid content out there is good.
No, that's definitely
Which
true.
I think is why Matt wanted to do this. So there is some kids stuff that's worth watching, I think.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Oh, for sure.
To that point, Christina, I think part of it is it's quite easy to reverse engineer a show that is going to draw the attention of young kids.
Good point.
So an example from when I was a kid was Power Rangers. I loved Power Rangers when I was a kid. It's not good. I recognize this. But it's like, you picture the executives like in the studio, like, what do 6-year-old boys like? And they're like, dinosaurs, yes. Robots, yeah. Giant aliens, yeah. Cool teenagers, yeah. Karate, yeah. That's the show, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, my kids have this show that they really like called Spidey and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, I've seen that.
It's basically Paw Patrol meets Spider-Man. So it's computer animated. The Spider-Man team are all kids. They save the city from very mild peril. Like Doc Ock invents this like mind control machine to steal everyone's hot dogs or something, right? So my kids really like the show because, again, it's superheroes, but it's aimed at them. It's not terrible, but it's also not particularly good. I try to steer them to other shows when I can, but also there is a category of shows that's effective for kids, but not necessarily enriching. So like the kid information junk food.
So it's like it's created by marketers, and they market it to or people with a marketing mindset, and it's to the lowest common denominator. So there's not really a lot of thought behind story or beauty.
Yeah, and again, like Power Rangers was bad. Spidey and His Amazing Friends, it's fine. It's not terrible. It's also not particularly good, right? So that sort of thing. You do feel like it's more, they care more about the marketing than the story. So I feel like, yes, Christina, that is definitely a category. Any other reasons that you were mulling over?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was wondering where you were going with that. Is it like, there's something about, see, I don't know that I could make a huge call as to like the general populace having a stigma. I know for me personally, I like to think that I'm a serious person. And if I think about like, I would like to sit down and watch a cartoon, then I don't see myself as a serious person. And so in my head, I'm like, Christina, you should be spending time.
Christina is the problem, man.
I probably am the problem. This is not wrong. I'm like, I should be watching a drama. I have not watched this drama that everyone's been telling me I should watch. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Do I watch the drama? No, I just usually go to like watch like some like cop show on TV or something. Like I don't actually choose the quote unquote enriching drama, but I also can't bring myself to be like, yeah, let's watch a cartoon. So I don't I don't know, we had family movie nights for the first time this summer while the kids were out of school. It was kind of like our weekly thing that we did. And so that was the time where I really got to like force myself to watch some of the animated stuff that I hadn't seen in a very long time. And so I got to have sort of an interesting sort of reintroduction slash not a new appreciation, Matt, but like I guess I would say a renewed sort of appreciation in what animated things do that other things can't, like other adult.
And I want to get to the animation point
Other
here
formats
soon.
can't do.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because I do think the animation aspect definitely has something to play in here. But first,
Okay.
I do think one of the things.
So you were speaking of kids' movies generally.
So no. I'm talking about
you weren't.
animated kids movies. That's what we're talking about today.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But for especially like kids TV shows, kids movies, one of the important things that I've been trying to do is try to find like the good stuff, right? Because within not all kids cartoons are created equal. Like this is something me and Danielle do every morning when the kids are getting ready for school. The kids want to watch Spidey and His Amazing Friends, which perfectly fine show, nothing particularly good. Me and Danielle want to watch Bluey because Bluey is a show for kids that is fantastic. Like it's beautifully done. It is art. It just happens to be art geared toward young children, but it's beautiful.
That's what everyone says. I've still not seen it.
Oh, it's so good.
Do you
It's
know
so
who,
good.
who introduced me to Bluey?
Who?
Your daughter.
I was about to say, was it Edith?
Edith. Yes.
She's seen like 3 episodes. She says she loves it.
That is part of it. Instead of viewing kids' cartoons as like a monolith, it's like, well, within this structure, there's bad stuff, or kind of just poorly made stuff like Power Rangers. There's okay stuff, Spidey, and there's really good stuff like Bluey.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing there.
Here's a weird comparison, but that reminds me of the conversation we had with my friend Dana about horror movies.
Exactly.
Very weird comparison.
Oh, no.
It's just but there are really bad horror movies, and then there are artistic and like actually well thought out storylines in the horror movies. And so anything that we treat as a monolith, we're missing. We're missing something.
Yeah. And that's also the case for this other side of the coin, right? We just talked about like the kids shows. Now the animation thing too. Again, I've heard otherwise very thoughtful people just basically like, it's cartoon, whatever. And like, that's the end of discussions. Like, it's cartoons for kids, blah, blah, blah. You see this stigma with like comics, whether it's comic books or like comic strips like Calvin and Hobbes, where there is this ongoing belief by some people that for somehow drawing a thing makes it lesser than if you like take a picture of it. That is something I frankly have a hard time wrapping my mind around. Mandy, can you get me in this cartoon prejudice? What is this irrational bigotry that people have?
I don't understand it either, but I recognize that it's there.
Okay,
Yeah.
Christina, are you the problem on this too?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I am.
tell us what's wrong with you people.
All right, here we go. Buckle up. No I'm kidding. I will say, as I play the devil's advocate here, I have come a long way in my maturity in appreciating. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I've said it. So I guess I would say a lot of it is there is that, and here's the thing. I'm trying to take it outside of myself, right? I'm an oldest child. I have always had a particular love like for beauty, for some like for the very rich visuals. The high-pitched voices can sometimes grate on me. Like the cartoon characters, like think of SpongeBob.
That's a good point.
I love SpongeBob.
Yeah.
That's a different episode.
I know, but like that's what I'm saying. Like, and then you just have sometimes even. I love movement. I love grace. I was a dancer, and some of the choppy, like cartoonish animations would really get to me.
Well,
it's just
and
unrealistic.
they're largely two-dimensional also.
Yeah, well, they're two-dimensional, right? Right.
That's fair. And also your love for, the natural world.
Right. And I
that
think
makes sense.
It's often the colors were too garish. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of Christina Brown going into that. But I know that there are a lot of other people like that too. So I don't want to say like that's uniquely me, but also it's uniquely me in that sense. But I think, well, Okay, so I know you didn't ask me the flip side yet, so I won't go there. But I will say that probably is a big part of why I still struggle.
So these are like your priors, right? Just coming into it, like your baseline assumptions. Those like your ingrained awful opinions.
Yeah, I mean, those are the things.
I almost smuggled it in without her catching it. Anyway, keep going.
So an animated film would have to earn.
I was just about to say, yes, that's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
That it has to earn my attention.
Okay. Now, I think another thing is just sort of where we are, right, in like America, in the West, because if you look even at a place like Japan, animated films have a very different thing. Like,
and they're not all for kids, right? They're
Originally, I just want to talk about animated films, but then as I started really researching, it was like, oh man, a lot of these anime films, like classic anime, are like they're like hard R ratings, right? Like really violent, really graphic. It's like these are clearly made for an adult audience. Just in Japan, they're used to that. In America, we're not so much used to that. So to get at the thing I really wanted to get at, where we limited ourselves to animated films aimed at kids, but just again, different contexts. Anime films can be very adult. But
well, I mean, for example, American-wise, The Simpsons, that was always intended to be sort of adult.
The
kids watched it. The kids totally watched it. But
maybe the cartoons like me. I love that because she's like,
do you know what? Actually, the Cartoon Network like grosses me out, and so I would rather watch an animated film for kids than some of the stuff they have on Cartoon Network. And I do love The Simpsons, but I think they've gone like Family Guy and like all that.
I only acknowledge
South Park.
I only acknowledge seasons 1 through 10 of The Simpsons.
Yeah, I stopped watching it after a while.
But anyway, that's a whole nother series of episodes we could do.
Well, I mean, I'm old enough that I remember when The Simpsons were just a little blip as like a little break in the Tracy Ullman show.
That's
so
right.
that's how old Mandy is.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, but I think I'm following you, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think we're all tracking.
So with that said, I think it is good to like just state these assumptions going in, because Christina, we're been teasing you, but there's a lot of listeners who probably have these same sort of just knee-jerk reactions to things, and those reactions are totally fine. A lot of people have them, but
getting into why is great.
Yeah, and hopefully we can give some examples that might convince the skeptical otherwise. So what I want to do now is we each pick like 2 or 3 films, and I just want us to take turns naming a film. Again, it's an animated film aimed primarily at children that we think, 1, is a serious work of art, and 2, the animation itself, like the animation medium, really helps it in some way. So, with all that said, Mandy, start us off.
Should I start with the one that like blew me away, or the one that I love, like the sentimental favorite?
That's a good question. Let's start with the one that blew you away.
Okay, Song of the Sea.
Oh, that was one of mine too. Good. I picked a lot, so I can do that too. I love Song of the Sea.
I just watched it today because I couldn't think of enough, and so then I literally Googled really beautiful kids films, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" I rented it on Apple, and after like 5 minutes, I told Peter, "You need to buy me this." DVD, because and the really fun aspect is the production company is called Cartoon Saloon.
It's a really terrible name.
I'm like, that is so misleading.
In fairness, I think that's actually one of the cooler ones that I've heard.
Well, but it is not.
They're an Irish studio. They make really high quality animated films.
Yeah, they're in Kilkenny, and I looked up.
They just happen to have a dumb name.
Their storefront looks like just this little like pub or something, but they also have done.
I like the name.
They've done The Story of Kells.
The Secret of Kells.
Secret of Kells.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that one in a bit, or maybe we should talk about it together. You start Song of the Sea. We might bring in Secret of Kells.
likes the wolf one too, but anyway.
We'll get to that.
All I've seen is Song of the Sea, and I was absolutely captivated. That was the word that kept coming to mind. I would literally frame some of the still shots of that film. I was blown away. I love the themes in it. Sorry, I'm like overwhelmed. The wonder of story, loss, which I want to say, I think something that a lot of kids' movies lack is they underestimate children and they lighten everything up. And I greatly prefer an honest kids' film. And this is a heavy, but not overbearing, like it's reality. It is deeply connected to Irish myths because it's the myth of the Selkie, which is a sort of a mermaid character. It's a person who turns into a seal when they're in the water, and then and I'm mangling that, and Evangeline is screaming at the speakers right now. Sorry, Evangeline. But also the theme of possibility. And then what I wrote down, and as I was watching it, I wrote, story connects us to one another and to the past. And then at the very end, one of the characters says, remember me in your stories and in your songs. And I was like, exactly. But all of those beautiful, deep, mystical sort of themes match so perfectly with the environment or the aesthetic, if you want to get trendy, of the film itself. It's all hand drawn. All of the backgrounds are like hang on your wall art, like misty, painterly, watercolory, but then some of the details are like artisans. So like maybe a tree is sort of primitive, like with swirls, and it looks sort of carved, I guess. And then I have to say, I love that the cliff has a face. I'm like, cliff face? Wow. Anyway,
it's great.
But then the animated characters, and there's a dog, right, Winston?
A very good dog. The dog is a very good boy.
Yes, he's a very good boy. They are more cartoonish. Not like Charlie Brown or anything, but they're more bright and just like the giant eye kind of thing. But I could not look away, and I was busy, but I kept having, if I had to look away for something like an animal, I would like rewind to see it again. And just stunning. The story, the music, and it could not, hands down, could not have been made as a live action film. No way, no how, had to be animated.
Totally agree. And I'll bring in Secret of Kells to this, because a lot of what you said applies to that as well. So Cartoon Saloon has this sort of trilogy of movies that draw very heavily from Irish mythology and Irish folklore. So that's Secret of Kells, 2009, Songwalkers, 2020. All of them are great.
These are all the same studio, right?
All the same studio. Yeah. So, and you'll be able to tell by the style; they're all very similar. And so, I'll talk about Secret of Kells because to me, Song of the Sea, Secret of Kells are both about equally great.
Is that the one that won the Oscar?
Wolfwalkers won the Oscar.
Okay.
The Oscars kind of always give all the awards to the last one in the trilogy. I enjoy the Wolfwalkers. I like the other two more. The Wolfwalkers is still good, but I
think 4 of the 5 films they've made have been nominated for Oscars.
I think so, because they also did one. The Breadwinner takes place on that. So Secret of Kells, they draw very heavily from traditional Irish iconography, but also from like medieval manuscript illuminations.
Yeah,
it's so good. Like what they do with the animation is brilliant. Like you said, man, I felt last time I was watching, I kept thinking like I could just pause any freeze frame and it'd just be like something I'd want to hang on my wall.
Yeah.
Every still is brilliant. The themes that they have. You mentioned Song of the Sea. One of the themes is grief and dealing with loss.
Yes.
And the big question, I don't want to give too much of the plot away because
I know, I was trying to be really careful.
But there's parallels between like the real world and like the fairy world of legend, and it's so good. And one of the themes is when you encounter a loss, do you close off yourself to the emotion, or do you let yourself feel the weight of the grief?
Yeah.
And so again, very, very heavy, very serious topic. Secret of Kells, the theme is, in a world that's dark and dangerous and full of like perils, what's the point of making beautiful things? And that's the main thing that they're talking about, because it's these monks trying to create this beautiful illumination, the Book of Kells, in the context of waiting for like the Vikings to come and destroy everything. And again, drives very heavily from Irish mythology. Same thing. Both just very beautiful movies. And like you said, if they did like what Disney did with like live action remakes of these movies, they would be off. They just wouldn't be the same.
Pick it.
Wouldn't
I would
be
go
the
to
same.
Ireland.
These movies need their beautiful animation. It's an essential part of the story.
Essential.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love to hear more about that from you, Matthew, because I hadn't seen it, and it keeps being on my radar anytime I'm talking to cool people, and then I forget.
Secret of Kells.
No, Secret of Kells, like all of these.
All of them. Yeah.
And so as you guys were bringing these up, I was like, okay, pulling out my phone, looking at images here, and you guys are right. These are
even just the
insanely
trailer
stunning
from Song of the Sea. The trailer, the opening shot of the trailer is one of the most beautiful. There are a lot of circles in it, like that's a motif throughout, and just
see, it's so symbolic. Okay,
at one point, I was sitting here by myself. Peter had left for his elder meeting, and I was watching, and I realized my mouth was open, and I didn't even. I was just.
That's amazing.
It was toward the end when they're singing. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. Those of you who have seen it, you know what I mean.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Great way to start us off. So Song of the Sea, Secret of Kells, and Wolf Walkers. All three are great. And again, yes. Please check them out.
Wait, I
Yes.
wasn't finished. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's okay, because I really want to pull on this thread that Matthew said, that you said, it was a statement, and I can't recall it exactly, but you said something to the effect of, you could not make these movies without the animation. It would not be the same.
If you tried to make these
And-
movies live action, you would lose so much of it. Like, it would be a very impoverished version of it.
Right. But I want you to just be like, to say why, because you said that beauty and the way it is done is it's integral, and it would not be. See, I wish I could remember the phrase that you said, but you basically made this really bold statement, and I wanted you to expound on it, and now I can't remember
so
what it was.
look at
It
it
was
this-
really good. That's all I'm saying.
So look at it this way.
I want the audience to hear it.
Let's take Van Gogh's Starry Night.
Sure.
Let's take that same scene as just a photograph. The photograph would still be pretty, but you're missing something.
You mean if someone were to take a camera
Take a
at that
photograph
starry
of
night
that scene. Like,
on the
let's
village?
say
At the
that
village.
picture, that like real life scene that Van Gogh's
Stand
basing Starry
right in
Night
that
up.
same
You
spot.
stand that same spot and take a photo.
Got it. That's
It
what I
would
thought.
still look nice, but you're missing something because you're missing Van Gogh's artistry. Similar thing with Song of the Sea and Secret of Kells. The artistry of the animators, the drawings, the art they're creating, it's just a huge part of the story, and you'd be missing a lot if it's just the photograph.
That is such an Anselmy thing, I just realized, because we're saying that God's work is absolutely beautiful. And when we, as his creation, so his creation is beautiful, but we, as his creation, when we participate and interpret through our own imagination, that just makes it, a whole new thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
it's so cool.
sub-creation, right?
The
So it's not-
sub-creation is not necessarily less. No, I'm not saying like if I sketched the Grand Canyon, it would look better than the Grand Canyon. That's not what I'm saying. But, there's something, what he has
Yeah, but
put
if you
in
put it
us-
in an illuminated manuscript, now
There
there's
you
something
go.
cool.
the human contribution is
is
essential
not
there.
for nothing.
Yeah.
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 Boy, that was eloquent.
It's not for nothing.
Not for nothing.
Sometimes it's those simple phrases that just catch.
There you go.
It's gonna just be like on a T-shirt now for Anselm.
Yeah.
Mandy, it's not for nothing.
All right, Christina, your turn.
Okay, yeah, goodness. Well, it's interesting because. Well, actually, okay. Rephrase the question for me,
Okay, so
so I can start fresh.
so
So I have these beautiful images of Song of the Sea in my
an
head.
animated film whose primary audience is children, that you believe is a serious work of art, and that the animation contributes to.
Okay, perfect. All right, I would love to put forth Coco. Actually.
Coco's a great movie.
Coco.
Yes, I love it.
Don't talk about Bruna. Or wait.
No, that's
That's Encanto.
That's Encanto.
You're right. I do that all the time. I like them both. And
They're-
I saw them in rapid succession, even though they didn't come out at the same time. But anyway.
That makes more
Coco.
sense. Yes,
Okay.
Coco, Day of the Dead.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Dia
Dia-
no
Dia
de
de
los
los Muertos.
Thank you. I totally butchered that, but I had it in my head.
Sí.
Yes. So I love that film. I remember it took me, you see, this is why, again, Brian is on your side, Matt, you see. And so he had to convince me for months to sit down and watch that with him. And I cried. So I was like, this is
the altar
good.
and the candlelight. And
Yeah.
The song he sings for Coco.
Oh, my goodness.
I
Yeah.
don't even cry, but I was almost making tears come out of my face.
Yeah, seriously, right? It's one of those things. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why I think this is a serious work of art and couldn't be told in another way. I think because of the colors.
Yes.
Like they're just so exaggerated on the colors on purpose. And I think that really puts the theme there. And the Day of the Dead, as far as the way they celebrate it, traditionally has a lot of those colors. But also if you think of dead people and ghosts, right, there's this very pale, ghostliness. And so I think when the movie, you'd find this on a summary, so I'm not giving it away, but
You can give a basic plot summary.
Yeah, exactly.
Here. Yeah,
When
you're not giving much away if you give like a very brief synopsis.
there you go. Okay, perfect. So when the ancestors are summoned on Day of the Dead and sort of honored, they all appear, right? And so sort of their ghostly-ish skeletal forms, and they interact with, the real life people. So I think that, of course, couldn't have been done without something super eerie and creepy, right? So I think that's where animation really helps it. It takes the seriousness of like, okay, these are dead people, but also they are also us. And there's a wall of separation that is there, but it's not as inseparable as we would think if we were to look at like an actual
the veil.
That's
Right.
a very Anselmy thing to say.
It is.
That's true. But of course there's just the warmness, the colors, you can do so much with that. There's the, and I would say this about animation in general, but there is an exaggeration for features and expressions and things like that are acceptable in animation that are not obviously used the same way in real. I have to have a better term for real life movies. That's like real
Live
time
action or
I guess, yeah.
no,
like,
live action is
yeah,
like
it's not-
a converted.
like,
What's
normal
the opposite of
person-
Live
animation?
action. That's
I
what
guess
that's
live
what
action.
Disney calls all of its really crappy remakes. Live action remakes.
well, yeah.
Well, but does live action then specifically refer to a previously animated film?
Right. Because what
That's
I'm just
the-
I think so.
Well,
that-
but then we need the opposite of that. We need to
Yeah.
know, like, what would you call? I cannot think of any non-animated films now.
we're
The Color Purple. I don't know.
Wow.
Sorry, I just saw that. I just
It's
saw
okay.
that.
You
two-
plucked that one out of the air.
You know
I
what?
saw
There's
it
so
2
many.
days ago. Okay, they could totally animate The Color Purple. Anyway,
Actually, that'd be anyway.
well, then that would be the third Color Purple.
So yeah, so we need a name for those other movies. In
Yeah.
comparison to the animation. Because what I'm trying to do is draw a contrast between your face, my face, and then,
Acted.
Coco's face, right? On
Right.
Coco, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I think, you can do, this is also true in the, this was another one of my examples, but Inside Out, it's animated and you can't do that again in real time because
Right.
all of these symbols are animated, right?
Right,
These-
anger. There,
yeah.
Yes.
So, and
Right.
again, their features are so exaggerated that you really understand them in ways that, Matt, put on a, costume and be anger, and Mandy, put on a costume and be empathy,
Right.
It's not the same thing, right?
Right.
So I think right there, in my opinion, the key to a good kids movie and why so many adults really actually should be paying attention to some of them is that they can speak to some really deep truths and make us really empathetic to things that we wouldn't necessarily notice.
Yeah. So
I like that.
let's start with the animation style of Coco, which is fantastic, and I think it has a couple things going for it.
By the way, it was done in 2017, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there, in a lot of places, the usual color symbolism is that the Land of the Dead is like gray, black and white. But in this movie, the Land of the Dead is vibrant, bright colors, like eye-popping colors as compared to like the normal world, right?
Except
So
for the people themselves. They're
Yeah.
like bones or skeletons, black and white.
But to that point, though, even though the bones and skeletons, the style that they're done in, it's very reminiscent of, the artistic style that you see in like the Southwest United States, throughout Mexico.
And they're wearing very colorful clothing.
Yeah, so it's borrowing on that artistic style. Like here in Colorado Springs, we actually have a really great collection of Southwest religious art from like New Mexico, Arizona, down to Mexico. And
Right.
the visual language is in Coco is like the same.
Well, like the artist Diego Rivera,
Yeah,
the calla lilies. It's very similar to that. And so it's honoring the very story.
Exactly.
The story itself and the origin of the story and the mythology
Yep.
by reflecting it in the art choices, which is same is true for Cartoon Saloon.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is very similar. Like Cartoon Saloon using like Irish imagery. This Coco's using Southwest like Mexico.
Yeah, there's
imagery.
there's no mist in
Yeah.
in Coco. It's very
No, but they do have like the stylized skeletons,
Yes.
stylized flowers,
Stylized
the
is a
vibrant
good-
colors.
that's a good word for it.
And again, that's something that lends itself very well to animation. Couldn't do that live action as well. And then in the story touches on some pretty heavy themes. One of the main themes is Coco. I forget the name of the main kid. This like 10-year-old boy. He wants to be a musician, but his family won't let him. Miguel,
yes.
because his like great grandfather abandoned the family to become a musician. So now the rest of the family closes off. So one of the themes there is loss. It's grief. It's how you deal with like this sense of betrayal. It's the value of family, the value of remembering your family, even the hard parts.
Beauty awakening, goodness. Yeah.
All these very
Yeah.
serious themes that they do in a movie where it's kind of a bunch of silly skeletons running around.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
All right, so now it's
Round 2.
well, I haven't done round 1 yet.
Oh, I thought Secret of Cows was your round 1.
Well,
you
I
go
kind of
for
just
it.
I kind of just threw it onto yours. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it then.
So mine that I want to talk about the most because it's one of my favorite animated films. It's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
So good. I love that movie.
It's so good.
Wait, it's animated?
Oh,
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Okay.
Christina. Oh, Christina. It's so good. So it's the first part of what's going to be a trilogy. The first 2 parts are out.
Okay.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out in 2018. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse continued the story.
Which I haven't seen yet.
It's
I need to see
fantastic.
that.
It's really good too. It's same deal. The third one should be coming out soon. It got delayed because of the writer's strike, but the second movie ended on a cliffhanger. So we're all waiting with bated breath. But what they're doing here is we all are familiar with the Spider-Man story, right? The Peter Parker, the radioactive spider. With great power comes great responsibilities. This is a movie that plays with the fact that we all know the story. We all know the different variations of the story. We all know this Spider-Man, that Spider-Man. And I saw this really great interview with the art directors of this movie. And the art directors made it clear they're huge comic books nerds, right?
Oh, yes.
So
you can
they're
tell.
borrowing their visual language from comic books.
Yes.
And that's what they did. They actually said, we want it to be, if you freeze frame any particular shot from this film, it could be a comic book page.
Right.
So like, you know how a lot of animation...
Like a cell. Don't they call them cells?
Yeah, each cell. A lot of animated films will add motion blur, right?
Right.
It's a way to imitate live action because a live action film would create motion blur naturally. Animated wouldn't unless they add it. So it's a way to mimic real life.
That's why it looks so different. I couldn't figure out.
This one doesn't. They use a lot of the same like artistic techniques of comic books.
The color is very basic primary colors.
Yep. And there's different Spider-Men from different Spider-Man universes. And some of these universes are very different.
Interesting.
Like one of them is Spider-Man Noir, so it's black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one is like an anime Spider-Man. So it's like this girl done in typical anime. So another one's Spider-Ham, who's a cartoon pig. So it's done like Looney Tunes style almost. And all these are blended together in the same thing. The animation is just astonishing. It's so impressive. And they take that actually even further in the second one, Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Like
watch that
it's so impressive.
But why is it good? Like, why does that uniquely make it better?
Well, because again, you have seen there's lots of live action superhero movies that are made. Some of them are good. A lot of them are so-so, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen so many Spider-Man movies that are live action, and a lot of them are fine, right? That well, actually, some of them are really good.
Yeah, some of them are great.
Some of them are good.
We have so many that 3 actors have had to play him so far.
Exactly.
Right.
But remember, Spider-Man originated in the comic books.
Of course.
So this is a visual language that it's sort of Spider-Man's native language, right? And it captures something, the energy, the vitality that you can't get from filming something in real life. Like let me give you a very concrete example without giving too much away. The protagonist in this one, the new Spider-Man, is this teenager from Brooklyn named Miles Morales, and he's trying to figure out his powers. He can't quite get it to work. So at the end, he needs to he leaps off the building, this big leap of faith. And the animators were walking through the buildings that they did. They're like, they altered reality to fit the shot. Some of the buildings, if you break it down, they're like 5-10 miles long.
Wow.
Not realistic. The way that the buildings are oriented, if you zoom out, they're like leaning into each other. So it's not realistic, but it serves the shot. That's something that you do in animation that you cannot do in live action movies. And it's so good.
But again, how does that make it better? I guess I'm just trying to argue, go back to where we're kind of trying to go, where I think we're trying to go with this episode, which is why should we, who don't, I'm just using myself here, who don't generally love animated movies, and I've seen all the other Spider-Man and I enjoy them, why should I particularly go to this particular animated version feeling like I'm going to be bettered by it, even though
I would say, because I think it changes the way you look at it in the same way that you said in your example. It just changes the way you see it. And there's a nostalgia to it also because it feels like comic strips. Is that fair?
That is definitely part of it. And again, with that shot, this climactic shot of Miles falling with the Manhattan skyline, it's not realistic. If you were to just do live action, it doesn't work. What they're communicating with Miles as a character, Miles as a hero, the visual language of the story, it just simply doesn't work if you're just trying to be photorealistic. You need the animated form to communicate the idea effectively.
That makes sense.
Across the Spider-Verse, there are scenes that
So basically The Secret of Kells, you're saying it wouldn't be...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some scenes that are they're animated as oil paintings.
Right. The integrity of the story lies
to communicate specific emotions. The animated visual language echoes the story beats. Similar to that, in sort of building off that, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, it's not just cool visuals. It's also a really compelling story in its own right. The character of Miles Morales, again, the protagonist, this 16-year-old high school kid, I think he's a fantastic character. He's existed in the comics for a while. This is his first introduction to the mainstream. He's biracial, so his dad is African-American cop. His mom's a Hispanic nurse, so he feels like a real kid. My brother teaches high school in New York. His students are like Miles. This is a real kid. He has real, believable emotions. And seeing him interact with all the different Spider-Men from the different Spider universes is really interesting. There's also these themes of, first off, playing with the narrative that we already know. This movie assumes we already know the Spider-Man story, right? It doesn't go into big detail about it. It's
that's actually asking about that.
Yeah, you've heard the story before. With great power, great responsibility. Bitten by a spider, blah, blah, blah. They take that as a granted.
Got it.
And that's really fun. But there's also these themes of community, of sacrifice. There's typical self-knowledge things about Miles. The climactic scene at the end of Into the Spider-Verse, when spoiler alert, you could probably guess this, Miles finally gets it, and he's got his powers. He's web slinging across Manhattan. Me and my wife, we brought our kids to see a version of it that was done at the Colorado Springs Philharmonic, where they played the movie in the background, and there was a live orchestra playing the music.
No way.
Fantastic. The kids all wore their Spider-Man costumes. It was great. But when that happens, after that scene, when Miles finally gets it and he does the web sling, they got the music in the background, like we all applauded. We're all like, yeah, like it was so good. And, another thing about the animation before I leave this, they play with the frame rates in a way that you cannot do in live action. So they were telling the art directors were saying that they intentionally would animate Miles at different rates than the other characters. So they would animate like Peter Parker, like the more experienced Spider-Man, on the ones. So it's like one frame he'd move. Miles was animated on the twos, so he only moves every other frame.
Oh, wow.
So it looks clunkier because Miles hasn't figured out his talents yet, right? So him and Peter literally aren't on the same page. They're not in sync. And then eventually they get in sync and they're both on the ones. And it's such a cool thing. And again, you cannot possibly do that live action. It's an animation thing.
That must feel kind of like visceral when you're watching it.
Like you can
it just
tell.
Clicks.
You can tell something's off, but then when you hear it explained to you, it's like, oh, I can totally notice. It's so cool.
That's
it's so cool.
So a quick question on that one. Is that one designed for, I guess, again, I'm thinking back to like our Japan, right? Like it's an animated film like designed for like more of an adult.
No.
It's
like my kids. They've seen it a million times and they love it.
Okay.
I mean, we go to every Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is Peter's absolute favorite superhero. So any Spider-Man anything, we're going to go. But he actually had to convince me to go to Into the Spider-Verse because I was like, I actually thought it was a step back. I'm like, why are they doing like a cartoon one? That's what I said when they have all the live action ones. And so then Bethany went with him and then they told me, no, you have to see this. And so, and they were right.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Yep. As always, listen to Peter, Mandy.
I know.
He has good insight.
Think I would know.
All right. So that was my first one. Mandy, what's your second one?
My second one is WALL-E.
WALL-E.
I know
WALL-E.
there are a lot
really good one.
There are a lot of Pixar movies to choose from, but I just there's something about WALL-E. Then I will say there's a family member of mine who hates it, thinks it's boring. not my immediate family. Anyway, and I am appalled.
That anyone would
it asks a lot of your attention, especially early on.
Yes, it does, but to me it earns it like from the first thing. So the themes that I think are so important are isolation versus community. Love. I mean, robot love story. Hello. Who would think I would like that? The thing about WALL-E,
it made me care whether two robots fell in love.
I know. You get so excited when they sort of hold, I don't know, hands. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, I have decided that they designed WALL-E's eyes based on the way dogs move their ears. Look, we think of that all the time with Winston when he moves his little floppy ears. To me, it looks like the way they moved WALL-E's eyes. The fact that they could make that robot look so like you know what he's thinking. How do we know what he's thinking? That's crazy. Anyway, also the movie had themes of like stewardship and responsibility and what happens to beauty if we're not good caretakers of beauty. The end credits alone are like a whole other, it's like a whole other party because it's like that, it has that sort of hieroglyphic, legendary sort of animation, you know what I mean? So even that was awesome to watch. I actually, when I was looking at it today, I read that they intentionally, sort of the opposite of Into the Spider-Verse, they got a director who made Blade Runner, I guess, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. So he was not the director. He was a consultant. And so one thing they did with WALL-E is they actually mimicked camera action, which now I have to watch it again because I want to watch for this. But it talked about like barrel rolls and like lens distortion and stuff like that normally... So they made it look like like it was being filmed as opposed to animated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of the silences just pull you in. And I was trying to think of a way to express what that did to me as a viewer. And interestingly, the best thing I could think of is when you're reading and there's really good description. when you're excellent imagery in writing requires the reader it engages their imagination in the same way that the silence you know what I mean? So it's a very different thing, because like it's a purely visual form that is engaging my imagination in a way that felt very similar to when I read a book that has good imagery and requires me to fill things in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
all. I just really love Wall-E.
Yeah. So the things that stand out to me about Wall-E is how absurd the pitch would have sounded to the producers.
Yes!
It's like, it's a little robot who doesn't say anything except Wall-E
for like 20
and
minutes,
Eva.
I think. 20 minutes, I think.
The world is empty and filled with trash. A robot's cleaning everything up. Kids will watch this.
And
it's
he loves Hello Dolly.
Yeah. And like they start off the first, 20 minutes, half hour?
I think it's 20 minutes of silence.
No
not
dialogue.
silence, but no dialogue.
No dialogue.
None.
And it's really
he has
it's
a little
really
cockroach
bold.
friend.
Yeah, like that's when Pixar was Reaganing. You're familiar with the term from New Girl. It's when you have
yes.
It's when you're just unable to make any mistakes. Like that.
Yes.
This was Pixar at the peak of its powers, where they can be like, yeah, we'll do this, and people be compelled by it.
Yes.
And it is. You just get drawn in. You're never tempted to like look at your phone. Because you need to pay attention. And it asks a lot of you.
Yeah.
And if you give it the attention, you're really rewarded for it.
Oh, yes.
Fun fact, it's cool to think that a good story like will draw your attention if it's the true story. Because it just will. It's our story. Anyway, I say that because from what I understand, what I've heard, the creators of Wall-E did it to mirror part of the creation story.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
Creation and fall.
Oh, yeah, the fall. Oh, that's cool.
Eve.
Well, yes,
she's the mother of all living.
Yes.
She holds the plant in her little womb. She's the
that's
bearer of
true.
life.
I gotta watch it again.
Yeah. Apparently, there was some kind of interview where they were sort of saying very gently, yes, this was a big inspiration for why we think the world is worth stewarding, because it had a purpose, and it was,
that's really cool.
Yeah, because the end is so brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the way that the end shows you sort of the future and the rebuilding.
Yeah.
And that
yeah,
we have all the material. It's all still there.
Yeah. I think that's where I'd like to go with mine too, is like the idea of
what is yours?
Yeah, what's yours?
Well, I will just say, the part of Wall-E that's kind of making me think of this is sort of the tenderizing. I don't think that's quite the right word there, because I'm thinking
like
of like meat tenderizing.
Yeah.
Right.
Just bashes the meat.
I know. But I'm thinking of like just the tenderness, like you said, Mandy, of like Wall-E's expression with his little eyes, like a robot. Like
his
they
little
make
cockroach friend.
they make a robot tender.
Yes.
And I think that is something that animators / cartoonists can do well with inanimate, generally, or non-living objects. And so, and it can take a really good story, a true story, creation, fall, restoration, and put it in a lens that we wouldn't naturally encounter in our day-to-day life.
Right.
And so I think
it's the power of story.
It's the power of story, exactly. But I think the power of animation, in that sense, you can't do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So again, so the reason it made me think of that was because I was thinking of the movie Up.
I thought of Up too.
I know. So,
especially the first part.
Oh gosh, the first part.
That's a whole movie right there.
Oh my gosh, bring me to tears every time. Which is remarkable, again, if you think about it, and think about Christina Brown, who doesn't normally like cartoons. The two that she mentioned brought her to tears.
Emmy and Lucas actually considered for their cake topper, you can get little cake toppers that are just their chairs.
Oh, cute.
The little up chairs.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, it's a story that, again, couldn't quite be told in the same way. And the balloons lifting the house to Paradise Falls. I mean, so absurd and yet works so beautifully well in the context of this love story, right?
Yeah.
Kind of that's the idea of like, I would go to the moon and back for you. It's like, yeah, well, I would take my house through balloons all the way to, South America for you and back. That
Right.
kind of idea.
Well, I think that's one of the amazing themes about that movie is what his life was like because of her, and it outlived her. The
yes.
change that she wrought in him and the longing for adventure. He felt like he lost it when he lost her, but he didn't.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's just so beautiful. And I think, again, because a lot of these things are sold, right, as kids' movies in some ways, like, is it terrible that I feel like using the misused quote by C.S. Lewis, slip past watchful dragons? Sort of the idea of like in kids' movies, there can be really good, true, beautiful things.
Yeah.
In ways that adults wouldn't necessarily like immediately acknowledge.
Succumb to unless
yeah.
I think Pixar in particular does a really good job of remembering the adult audience.
Pixar definitely
And
does,
not in a way where like Looney Tunes did, which was making
Love
winky
Looney Tunes.
jokes. I love Looney Tunes. But they like kept the adults engaged by making
That's how
jokes.
I learned about opera.
By making jokes the kids won't get, which are funny. But Pixar, I think, is so good because they appeal to the heart of the adult and the mind of the adult, even as they are drawing in and enchanting the child.
Yeah.
And it also shows, again, this was when Pixar was Reaganing, because their premise was super old guy.
Yeah.
He's sad because his wife died.
Attaches balloons to his
Kids
house.
movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Right?
Well, do you know what?
Yeah.
It's actually funny. My husband's cousin used to work for Pixar. And it was right after A Bug's Life. And when I met him and he was we were like, what's the next project? What's the next project? And he was telling us, oh, it's about this little fish who loses who gets lost in the ocean. And I remember sitting there and I was like smiling and nodding. And I was like, what? Inside, I'm thinking, wow, that's not going to work. But they weren't Reaganing yet at that point, I think. That was
they were
pretty
building
new.
up to I would say
What was their first one?
First was Toy Story.
Of course. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then Bug's Life, I think. And then, so I was like, oh, these movies are good, but I wasn't, it wasn't at the point where you're like, oh, a Pixar movie. I don't even need to know what it's about. I know I'm going to love it. And so when he said, oh, it's this fish and he ends up in the ocean. And I'm like, the movie's about
I would say Pixar's apex was in this triumvirate of WALL-E, Up, and Ratatouille.
Oh, yes.
Those three movies, that's when they're at their pinnacle.
Ratatouille
all three are great
okay.
movies, and all three have absurd premises that never should have worked.
fact.
Yeah, Ratatouille is my son-in-law's favorite movie. What?
Oh,
or favorite Pixar. Go ahead.
Fun fact, the same guy wrote the score for Ratatouille, Coco, and Up, the musical
there we
score.
go.
Interesting.
Well, there we go.
I have a hard time with Ratatouille just because every now and then, especially when the rats are all running at once, my Mandy brain kicks in and pictures them as real rats, and I go, whoa!
Talk about a scene that you can only really convey.
Yeah, we don't want that live action.
When the food critic takes the bite of Ratatouille and he's transported back to his childhood.
Yes, beautiful.
Only can communicate it through animation.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right.
Okay, you have one more.
I have a ton.
I know you do, but we're running low on time.
We can get loosey-goosey with it. Okay, so
whatever.
I would be remiss if I did not mention what is widely considered the greatest animated film of all time. And that, of course, is Spirited Away.
Oh, I was going to say Cinderella, because I also love Cinderella. But go ahead.
Cinderella's good. Very
I have
different.
not seen Spirited Away. Wait a minute. Yes,
I told
have.
you to, remember?
Yes, I saw it.
You texted me while you were watching it.
I don't know what just happened to my brain. Yes, I've seen Spirited Away.
Tell me, listeners, to prep for this show, Mandy asked what movies she should watch. And basically, my first thing was like, Spirited Away. If you only watch one, make it Spirited Away. Mm-hmm. So, what did you think?
I was so confused. That is what I said to you. I texted you while I was watching it, live tweeting. I said I am confused, and what did I say? And fascinated, or something.
Yes.
At the same time.
Let me see what exactly you said. Rather confused, but also enchanted.
And here's what I will say: not to throw my husband under the bus, but here he goes. No, I'm just kidding. Part of the issue, I think I would have loved it more if I hadn't been watching it with Peter, because Peter was making all of these like eyebrow weird, like what is happening faces. And so I had a hard time getting spirited away into the movie. But I need to watch it again because do you ever do that? Like when you're watching something with someone and you can tell they're not really into it.
Yes.
So then I kept apologizing because I'm like, I'm sorry.
My annual viewing of Die Hard every Christmas with Danielle.
Yeah.
It's like, Danielle, don't you recognize this is one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time?
Okay. Solution. You and Peter watch Die Hard and Danielle and I will go to the Broadmoor and look at the gingerbread
That's actually a great idea.
Because anyway, but no. And so it's just not really Peter's speed. Like he has to understand what's happening to like get it. Yeah. Is it for children? Because it's so scary. I would think it would be scary.
That's a great question. So me and Danielle watched it. It's sort of with an eye to like what our kids like. Because again, like, if you ask, I would say this is the consensus pick of like greatest animated film of all time. Spirited Away. So a little background.
Wait,
2001 film.
It's Studio Ghibli.
It's Japanese. So Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki, and it's a story of a girl. I think she's like 10 years old.
Yeah.
Her and her parents are moving to a new town. On the way, they stop by an abandoned amusement park, and throughout the course of that, her parents start eating food and turn into pigs.
Yep.
And the girl gets sort of spirited away into like the supernatural, like the spirit realm.
Yeah.
And the what she's trying to do is rescue her parents and get back. And she's given this job at this bathhouse that this witch runs, that all these like different spirits and Japanese folklore characters come to. And it's a very interesting movie for a lot of reasons. One, it draws very heavily on like Japanese folklore. Like one of the things I realized after seeing it is like you look at these characters like, oh, this character is like running the boiler. He's a figure from Japanese mythology.
I did think I would be understanding this a lot more if I knew Japanese folklore.
So they're, rough equivalents, so sort of like us in the Western world will be like, oh, a dwarf, an elf, a troll.
Right.
It's roughly similar to that.
Right.
And it also derives heavily from like Shinto Buddhism ideas. So like, you'll notice there's like the river spirit.
Yes.
These different spirits for different inanimate objects.
Right.
The story has sort of a dreamlike quality to it.
It does.
Where you feel like the story is what, like the narrative arc is what's more important. The specific facts, it's just sort of like this Alice in Wonderland
good
sort
point.
of topsy-turvy logic. So
I had a Wizard of Oz kind of. I had a total Wizard of Oz vibe.
Yeah, I think Alice in Wonderland's along those lines too, where it's like you just sort of need to go with it.
Yes.
The animation is absolutely gorgeous. It's hand-drawn.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's very scary. Like me and Danielle figured like, ooh, I don't know if our kids can handle this quite yet.
Yeah.
Like they may need to be a little older.
I mean, when the baby is scary, then you have, that baby scared me. I like the baby better when it turned into the mouse.
Yeah, and I will admit, I've only seen this movie one time. I want to watch it again because I feel like I'd get a lot more of it watching it again.
I want to look into Japanese folklore first.
do a Wikipedia deep dive.
No. I have a former student, the one who my pencil tattoo, she drew my pencil tattoo for me. She is a Japanese and Korean like expert. So I'll ask her to point, and she loves Studio Ghibli. So I'll just ask her, I'll cheat.
Well, there you go. Have her there as like your reference the whole time.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we are running a little low on time. So maybe we could do a rapid fire round. Any other like movies you wanted to mention briefly? Because I have a ton.
You have a ton. I mean, I love Cinderella. And Sleeping Beauty. I like the old Disney because those were the hand-drawn.
I love Sleeping Beauty's art style.
The Sleeping Beauty was done on glass. Do you know about that, right?
Oh, really?
Yes. So when you watch Sleeping Beauty, it looks like it's in layers because it is. Because they they painted on glass, and the backgrounds were inspired by unicorn tapestries. Hello.
Yeah.
And so when you watch Sleeping Beauty, that's what you need to know is what they did was each layer, the background and then the midground and the foreground were different panes of glass, and they shot the camera through the glass.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the artist who is sort of in charge of that, I'm going to mispronounce their name. Avend Earl, Earle is his last name. And I just love looking at
That's right. That's Earl. Yeah.
So I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but just do a Google image search,
Mr.
listeners.
Earl.
His illustrations of like different fairy tale images are fantastic. I absolutely love them. I love the artistic vision of Sleeping Beauty. Let's also talk about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
The OG. I think it gets neglected because they're so ubiquitous now, but it's a real achievement.
It is.
Like I watched it with my kids, and like some of the shots, like remember the introduction of the dwarves? They're approaching, and you just see their shadows cast really large against the cliff.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden,
It's
but
a
then
really
they're small.
cinematic shot that they animated.
You want to talk about trying to pitch that?
Yeah.
So how do you? Well, I guess he didn't have to. He was in charge.
He ran the studio.
He ran it.
All right. Any other rapid fire ones, Mandy?
I mean, almost anything Pixar except any Cars sequel. Only watch the first.
Most
Cars.
of the sequels aren't. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. All right.
And Toy Story 3.
Toy Story.
Wait. Oh, yeah. I won't watch Toy Story 4.
I heard it's pretty good, but I still don't want to
I'm not going to watch it because Toy Story. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Toy Story 3 ended so beautifully. I don't need some spork. I don't need a sport character. Anyway,
It's
anything
true.
from you, Christina?
I was thinking about so many.
See, we need to have her watch more, and we'll have a part 2.
That's what we should
Yeah,
do.
the sad thing is there's a lot of these that you guys were talking about I haven't
The Christina
seen.
Brown
that's
re-education camp.
Yeah,
You know what?
Bethany has told me to
could be a
watch My
thing.
Neighbor Totoro.
That's on my list.
Oh, you
I haven't
She
seen
likes
it yet.
that one better than Spirited Away.
Okay.
But I am loving the whole Sleeping Beauty thing because that was another thing that I think he was inspired by. I think the whole thing was inspired by both tapestry and stained glass, like artistry in general.
Yeah.
And so then
if you look
the
at it-
actual creation
If
of
you
it
look at it with the
goes-
mindset of the unicorns tapestries, you're like,
I love
oh,
it.
of course.
it makes so much sense. It just
Yeah.
puts art with the capital A into it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
That was a good ending line.
that was
right
a good
there.
ending.
I'm polishing off my final glass.
Well, I have a lot more movies to at least give a shout out to.
Go ahead. I'll eat the maraschino cherries.
So
You go ahead.
first off, I'd like to shout out a couple. I love stop motion movies.
Oh,
I think
yes.
it's fantastic.
I didn't even think of that option.
Yeah, so a couple that I want to emphasize from Wes Anderson, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs.
I have not watched that.
Highly recommend both of them. The Wes Anderson feel married with the stop action, it's just a marriage made in heaven. It's like Korean Mexican fusion food. It's like, you two are made for each other.
Well, the aforementioned Japanese animation expert who drew my pencil tattoo actually went to Falmouth University in England and did stop action animation.
Love it. And now,
Yeah.
this is going to be interesting too because, as we all know, we being good Anselmers in good standing, we all love the novel Piranesi, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
These are early talks. A lot of times
No
they don't
way.
result in anything. The movie rights to Piranesi have apparently been gone to the Leica studio.
What's that?
Leica is the stop motion studio that's
No.
produced Coraline, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, Paranorman. I'm psyched.
Wow.
Again, early rumors
I never
may not
thought of that.
may
Didn't
not
we-
result in anything, but a stop motion Piranesi by Leica. Yes, please.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Oh, my gosh.
I know. I think we may have to have an Anselm field trip if this movie
Because
actually.
didn't we talk about that when we talked about Piranesi before, that if they made it into a movie, they would have to make it animated? But I didn't even think of stop motion.
With the Leica people, I mean, that'd be.
The Leica.
I mean, Leica, like Coraline, brilliant movie, absolutely brilliant.
That's the only one I've seen of the ones you
yeah.
said.
Well, Paranorman's fantastic. Box Trolls is really good.
Oh, no, I saw Box
Kubo
Trolls.
and the Two
What am I
Strings is
talking
good.
about?
It's a little too sad for my taste.
I love Box Trolls.
It's really good.
Can I mention a non-kids animated movie?
Yes.
Have you seen it yet? Loving Vincent?
No, I saw the trailer and it looked amazing.
You have to watch Loving Vincent.
What it was done?
I didn't know it was animated.
It's animated using oil paintings.
Animated is sort of I don't know if that's even the right word, because what they did, and by the way, this is also why I am convinced, and we can do another podcast about it if you want. Vincent van Gogh did not kill himself. He did not. Anyway, but so Loving Vincent is an hour and a half film, and the entire thing, there were over 100 painters who painted every frame.
Like oil paintings.
What they did, oil paintings in the style of Van Gogh.
Whoa.
And so they actually do have actors, and you can tell because one of the actresses is Saoirse Ronan, and you're like, oh, that's Saoirse Ronan. But no, it's not, because it's an oil painting of Saoirse Ronan.
Right. They had the models,
so
but it was all...
you can tell like what they must have done is had the people act the scene, and then they covered over it. But all the backdrops, and if you're a really keen eye and you know Van Gogh paintings, you will recognize, they're like, at one point they're showing Gauguin moving in with Vincent, and he's like moving the chair, you know? Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I've seen it twice now. It's brilliant.
Okay.
Not for kids. They would fall asleep.
Well, that is on my list. Thank you. Okay, good. So another ones want to give some shout outs to The Iron Giant. Absolutely wonderful film. 1999. It's on one level an homage to like old 1950s, like Cold War sci-fi. It came from outer space dramas.
Okay.
On another level, it's a kid. It's a sort of coming of age story of a kid who meets a giant robot from Mars and becomes friends. Really, really deep, really moving themes that really resonate. It's just a fantastic movie.
Okay.
Let's see. We also have. Oh, speaking of stop motion, Wallace and Gromit.
I love Wallace and Gromit so much. Have you watched Wallace and Gromit at all?
Oh, for
Christina?
sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Childhood favorite.
I love Shaun the Sheep, the one where he gets shaved and then they make the sweater and then he wears the sweater of his wool.
So to that
cute.
point, they have a Shaun the Sheep movie. So an entire movie, no dialogue. Yeah. My kids...
You don't need dialogue when it's Wallace and Gromit.
Locked on.
Oh, yeah.
No dialogue.
When he goes
these
to
young
the moon
kids, they're
for
paying
cheese.
attention.
Sorry.
The wrong trousers.
The wrong trousers! I love it, yeah.
Oh.
Wallace and Gromit is the reason the aforementioned, now twice, student, hi Anna, that's why she got into stop motion, is because of Wallace and Gromit.
How cool
there
is
we
that?
go. There
That's
we
very
go.
cool.
And also want to give a shout out to a couple of just very well-made DreamWorks films. Kung Fu Panda, which
I haven't seen it.
The kung fu that they do with the cartoon panda is actually really high quality.
Oh, that's funny.
Story's totally solid too. And also, because this was kind of an influence on my book, How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh,
the entire
love How to Train Your Dragon.
Trilogy is great. I especially love the first one.
Yes.
The moments they capture, I especially like the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. Mm-hmm. The first flight that they have together, the Viking boy who trains a dragon to fly.
Yeah, music's fantastic.
Just great. Again,
and you said the book's not that good. Is one of those?
Not that good.
It's a flipped.
Yeah, it's kind of just
the exception that proves the rule. The movie's better.
Yeah,
like Shrek.
Yep. Movie's
I
way better.
listened to you.
Thank you. Everyone, look at my TikTok. I have lots of opinions on this. But anyway,
what do you not have lots of opinions on?
I could go on. But things are winding down. Actually, they wound down a while ago, and I just kept talking. Things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. The fire is down to embers, the customers are trundling home, and you have polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. If you have an extra less than a minute, please rate and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
5 stars.
5 stars, please. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.